Hmm.
Good morning, Dr. Brad.
Hello, Kurt.
How are you this morning?
I'm quite well. I have coffee.
Looking very dapper.
Why, thank you.
I'm quite fond of you in the gray and blue and gray and red suit coloring. Makes us
I appreciate your help.
Well, I'm not gay, but I make a good attempt at it. You see that? You see that? I almost got you to have that. That coffee almost came out the wrong way.
That was a snarfy one.
God, I love you. I just want to start out today is Sunday, June 2nd. We're working on, this is supposed to be a working session. We're supposed to be working on embodiment. I have in the usual format, I will try to load, because we haven't been working on this, because you had an off-site conference, so to speak, where you had to go away for a few days. So now I have to mount this all back up in my head so that we can go on to it. So we'll do that. It'll take a bit. Before that, I wanted to thank you because I've been having some little difficulty with knowing what to do with the organization of late. And I just want to thank you for your, as always, your wise counsel, even though it usually includes some side of making fun of me. That's
the cost of doing business.
That's the cost of doing business. So I want to thank you for that. And for those people listening, it's just, when you grow organizations, you go through generations. And when you're talking about starting out as a fringe intellectual movement, you start out with really fringe people, which was really annoying, frankly. And then you gradually move towards less fringe people. And then you finally move to the people who are not fringe. Then you move to the people who are they're not fringe. They're quite skilled in what they do. And so there's this challenge of upgrading things. And so I'm having a sort of crisis of the moment, not crisis. I'm having a challenge of the moment, trying to figure out how to handle this fact that we are basically gaining legitimacy. And so when you gain legitimacy, you have to divest yourself of those things that bring into question legitimacy. And so sort of going through that change right now. And also it's because our mission is quite adult, really. Right? I mean, it's quite adult mission. And so if you lack if the audience you're appealing to, or the people that you're trying to serve in the audience, their audience capture, are not adulting well, you really have to move beyond them, because it means they lack the agency to bring about the objectives you're trying to fulfill. So I just want to thank you very much for helping me work through that a little bit. So maybe it's a continuous. I wish more people thanked more people more often. I realize I might do it excessively, but I wish more people thanked others more frequently for the benefits they brought to them.
Well, thank you, Kurt.
Now that I've complimented you, that means I can make up for it in the rest of this.
That's it.
You
got credit.
Is that I bought a credit? So I just figure I have to keep pace with you. I mean, I've got to even the score, otherwise you'll just get so far ahead it's unrecoverable.
Oh my. Well, this is my opportunity, I think, to ask the audience to please hit subscribe and the like button and the notification bell, and then to leave those comments below.
Yes.
Say thank you to Kurt for this work.
We're getting a lot of thanks lately. I feel like we're getting a lot of thanks lately. I mean, there's a lot of this. I had a great one yesterday. It was like, well, studying Doolittle's a rabbit hole, right? I mean, and it really is, honestly. So, but you get a lot out of it.
It's the rabbit warren of rabbit warrens.
Yes. First principles and all that. You know, I was thinking this morning, I don't know why it came to mind. Oh, it came to mind because I was thinking about our shorts are 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right? We single shot, which you've been doing a much better job of letting me get to an endpoint and then say, okay, that's enough. Shut up now. What are you gonna do? I want to thank you for that too. But I was thinking about it because if you listen to, people don't listen to real analytic philosophers present analytic philosophy, and there's very little of it on YouTube. Surprisingly, not surprisingly,
Right.
because when you say the positiva, it's a short path, but when you're an analytic philosopher, you have to do the negativa. Right, you have to eliminate all the surface area around it, and mind it, leaving only those things that aren't false standing. And so I can sit through that stuff, right? And and I noticed that the people who can sit through my stuff can sit through that too, right? If they can sit through, it's the same reason, because for some reason you can follow, right? And so it's just the ability to maintain context and memory. So so you listen to those people, and I understand why people drop out, because it's just like, what's the point here? The point is what's left, not what's stated, right? I mean, you can state the premise, we're going to do this, but then you're going to eliminate all the surface area around it, leaving only the thing left, and then they're going to state it at the end. But unless you have this vast volume of knowledge, you can't understand what the person is saying, right? You'd almost need to have the argument first, and then eliminate the signs around it. But what happens when you do that is people when you give the via positiva and they don't like it or disagree with it, then they stop listening. So what you do in analytic philosophy is you present the argument, right? I'm going to do this, present the via negativa, and you eliminate all the counter propositions, saying the only thing left standing is why, right? So I'm conscious of the fact that, when I do things, I'm doing all these arcs for the same purpose, right? I'm not doing it in the way an analytical philosopher would do it with sets, right? I'm doing it with series, right? Which is sequences. And so, I mean, because I mean, fundamentally, as a philosopher, I would qualify as the analytic side. But since I don't do set logic, I do operational logic. It's basically science. I mean, so it's the same thing. So I try to do all that. It was funny because I was on a conversation with Roger Lynch and team the other day, and the tolerance for my arcs is very low, even in that group there. And I thought it was interesting because, and these are not numbskulls, right? These are especially Rudyard's equivalent of Martin is a real hot shit. I mean, the guy's and so you're with these people and you realize, okay, the arc can't follow the arc. They don't have patience for the arc, right? And then you get to the end and it's like, it's one of those things is like, well, when I listen, I know history really well. I don't know it as well as Rudyard does, but I have a theory of history, obviously, that's pretty concrete over all time. And so when I listen to him, I'm like, yeah, he's right. He's right. I mean, he's right. He's right. The problem is that when you make a scientific argument to a historian or historians, that they lack the requisite knowledge to comprehend the scientific argument.
Yes,
I find it quite funny that I can understand that position, but it's not they can't understand the scientific position, and or they don't have patience for it. The other thing is that it's like, why do you think you know? I always have this question of, you know, when I was a kid, I would be like, well, I know this, but I don't know that that's all I know. I don't know that it's right. I just, that's all I know. I'm still open to what I don't know, right?
Right.
And you get these people who have high confidence despite their ignorance. And so I'm like, well, I would go to Rudyard, somebody go to Rudyard, and it's like, well, or any historian. I'm not, I mean, this is a very dear friend of mine, right? So I'm trying to show that despite being basically what I consider peers, right? It's still, we can understand each other just fine, but our audiences can't. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so when you get to this, you say, well, if I were to talk to somebody in their field, and that person wouldn't like, if I talk to you about medicine, for example, right? I
Right.
don't fucking know, right? Right. So, I would not come back and say, I would only come back and say that doesn't make sense to me, or I don't understand that. I would not come back and say that's wrong, right? That would make, first of all, it would be profoundly arrogant. I mean, I'm pretty fucking arrogant, and I wouldn't do that, right? I mean, so when you go to somebody and they say, well, no, because I'm going to go with my understanding because my understanding is what I understand. I'm like,
Right.
okay, that doesn't tell me anything, right?
Right.
Right. So it's just a very interesting, a very interesting uh, thing that happens when you notice with professional academics, it's the other way around. It's that they'll just say, I don't know. I mean, that's also what a PhD teaches you, right? It's like, what do I know and what don't I know? Right. And then there was an interesting one is that I went through and did a search for all the wacko theories in physics, right? I think I told you about this because we did
Okay.
this back in that August when you convinced me we needed to do the physics first, right? And so I went and did this, and so I found one guy who didn't have 100% wacko theory. As a matter of fact, I think at least the central premise he's working from is probably true, right?
Okay.
And that's because there's there are no assumptions, right? I mean, it's built
Yeah.
constructive logic, right? And we can test all those constructions, and the math works out, right? So, and then I had some woman came on yesterday. She was talking about cranks because you get engineers who haven't done the work in physics, and so they're applying engineering knowledge to physics, and they come up with crank theories and whatever, right? So, so you get this, and I'm like, well, you know, dear, there's a problem is that physics has gone sideways, right?
Okay.
But it's not gone sideways. And yes, those are still crank theories,
Right.
but defending yourself by the math is not okay because math is the problem, right? Don't understand it. People who work with mathematics, you don't understand it, or don't understand its limits, then try to solve a problem with mathematics that can't be solved with mathematics. It can only be solved with additional information that is not present in a statistical model. It's only present in an operational model. So, you know, you get this. So I'm just, you know, it's just one of those things where I'm glad that by doing all the work you've helped me do to make this accessible, that people are basically at least starting to get some of it.
Right.
Because it's actually been, I've told to you a million times, but the work to understand the problem was a lot less than the work to understand how to communicate the problem.
I agree.
Does that make sense? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I went off on that for a particular reason, and I don't exactly remember why. It had to do with the problems you face as growing this kind of organization and legitimacy when there are people who can't keep making the transition, right? And that's largely the audience, but it could be people who are, because we've gone through people in our past anyway. I just wanted to bring that up, and I wanted to, as a proxy for saying Thank you for helping me through it. Okay. All right, so today I think you want me to share my screen.
Yeah.
And I
You
just
want to make
wanted,
that a short?
huh?
You want to make that a short?
Sure, let's make that a short.